White from Sassoon Police Department. Chief Badu will speak first, followed by Commander White, and then we will field any questions. Chief.
Good morning, everybody. Thanks for being here today. Like Lieutenant Bassett said, I'm going to give you a quick overview of the events that occurred last night. For the record, my last name is spelled B like boy, I-D-O-U. My first name is Andrew, A-N-D-R-E-W. And again, I'm the police chief here in Vallejo. And if you're ready, I'll start here in just a second for you. Everybody caught up? Good. Okay. Good morning, everybody. My name is Andrew Badu. I'm the police chief for the Vallejo Police Department. You know, last night, approximately 8:40 p.m., 2 Vallejo police officers were taking a coffee break at Starbucks, located at 199 Lincoln Road here in the city of Vallejo. When they were sitting there at the table, Adam Powell, a 41-year-old Sassoon resident, appeared in the doorway and attempted to assassinate the officers with an assault weapon. As Powell tried to shoot the officers, his weapon malfunctioned. He was not able to get off the shot. The officers saw the suspect as he was trying to clear that malfunction, and they engaged him with their weapons drawn. They were able to get Powell to flee the scene as they engaged him, and they pursued him on foot. As they chased him, they re-engaged him on Magazine Street near Meridian, and Powell was shot 3 times. Shortly after that point, he was taken into custody, and our officers immediately started first aid. There's no doubt that the life-saving measures that our officers took have contributed to Powell being alive today. He's currently in the hospital seeking treatment and listed as stable but critical. Powell was wearing body armor, and his assault weapon was affixed with a barrel-type magazine that holds approximately 70 rounds of high-powered ammunition. He was also found to be in possession of a loaded fire or handgun as well. The 2 officers involved were not injured. The Vallejo Police Department is currently investigating this incident in conjunction with the Solano County District Attorney's Office. At this point, we know the suspect drove by Starbucks approximately 6 minutes before this confrontation, and so we presume that this was a premeditated ambush on our officers. Powell is the father of the 2-year-old boy that was shot in Sassoon yesterday, and here with us today is Commander White from Sassoon Police Department, who will give you some information on that investigation. Before I turn it over to Commander White, I just want to thank the community for the outpour of support that the officers and the police department have received. My phone has literally not stopped ringing or receiving texts from members from all over the community, and we're very grateful for that. I just want to say that this event underscores the extreme danger that our police officers face on a daily basis. More importantly, it underscores the bravery and courage our officers possess and to place themselves in harm's way to protect our community. There's no doubt in my mind that if it wasn't for the decisive action of our officers, that we'd be telling a much different story.
In critical condition with a gunshot wound. There were several persons present inside the residence at the time of the shooting. A person of interest who was present at the time of the shooting but left prior to officers' arrival was identified. During the initial search, officers did not locate a firearm inside the residence. The person of interest was identified as Adam Powell, father of the child. Officers took immediate steps to try to locate and contact him, but were unsuccessful. He was identified as having connections to Vallejo and also to the city of Dixon. Last night, we were notified by the Vallejo Police Department regarding Powell's actions that occurred within their jurisdiction. We're working in coordination with the Solano County District Attorney's Office, the Vallejo Police Department, and the Solano County Sheriff's Office in investigating this incident, and we are grateful for their assistance. We too would like to recognize the actions of our dispatchers who took this call, which was obviously a very difficult call to take, but obtained critical information that was helpful in investigating this incident. We'd also like to recognize the fire and medical personnel that rendered life-saving aid to the child while they were transported to the hospital.
This time we'll take some questions. We do have some photos that we can, of the arrested suspect that we can pass out after the briefing, and also a couple of photos of the weapon that was recovered from the scene. Questions?
Yeah, really quick, Chief, you said that this seemed to be a premeditated attack. Do you believe that the suspect had the intention of carrying out this attack when he was in Sioux City and his son, or boy or girl?
Yeah, we don't have that information now. We have not been able to talk to suspect Powell yet because he's getting medical treatment, but we expect to have more information, as that availability comes.
Do you believe the father shot the boy, or the boy found the gun, or the child, I should say, shot themselves?
So at this point in time, we're exploring all possibilities, but the initial indications are that it seems to be an accidental shooting that occurred within Suisun City. But again, we're looking at all possibilities.
Are these registered guns, or can you tell us more about these guns?
We had, as you can imagine, we had a lot of detectives here last night. They were here till the very early hours of the morning, probably just 3 or 4 hours ago themselves went home. So we do not have that information at this time.
Can you describe the body armor?
I'm sorry?
Can you describe the body armor?
It was just soft, it was described to us as soft body armor, so similar to what a police officer would wear under their uniform.
Are
Yes.
either the guns connected to the shooting of the boy?
Can you explain a little more about the assault weapon? Because there was some surveillance video that we got from the nearby gas station. At least in that video, it didn't look like he was carrying anything, at least when he was getting chased by those officers. Can you explain, was there a weapon dropped, or what was this weapon that he used?
The weapon is it's a collapsible stock assault weapon with a drum magazine. It was slung over his shoulder. And so I've seen the video that you're referring to. It's difficult to see. It's a poor quality video. However, there is a video in the Starbucks, which we do possess, which is a little bit better. However, because the suspect was outside and the lighting conditions, it's not ideal.
Are either of the guns connected directly to the shooting of the boy? Have you been able to tie the ballistic?
We haven't determined. That's still ongoing. Obviously, that's stuff we're looking at.
And are those two officers the target of the ambush, or is it any officer in general?
Well, the suspect was interviewed when he was being transported. We don't have that specific information from him, but his actions certainly indicate that the officers are particularly targeted. He drove by the location in a vehicle several minutes before he presented himself at the front doors and leveled his weapon at the officers while they were seated at the table.
What can you tell us about Adam Powell? What do you know about him? What does he do? What is he, prior?
Well, he is a convicted felon. He served prison time, I believe, for robbery and some drug-related offenses.
Can you describe more what happened with the Starbucks? Did he raise the gun? Did he try to actually pull the trigger and it malfunctioned? Or at what point, and you said clearly he was targeted.
Yeah, the officers, most of that information comes from them. They obviously had the best vantage point. Both of the officers separately described the officer or the suspect manipulating the weapon as if he was trying to clear the action of the weapon. So some type of malfunction in the weapon is what we're presuming. And the weapon was leveled at them when he was doing this.
So we can assume a malfunction saved the lives of those two officers?
It's a pretty good guess, yes.
Is it a jammed gun, like a round jammed in the?
It's, we refer to it as stovepipe, yeah, so there was an expended cartridge that was in the action.
Other people in Starbucks, obviously there were some workers and there were patrons, and obviously other people were dangerous.
It was a little bit later at night, and so there was, I think, one other patron or two patrons. We've interviewed one of those, where the other person has been identified. We're still looking to get a statement from him, and all of the employees were interviewed as well. The incident happened very quickly. He presented himself. The officers recognized it within just a couple of seconds and drew their weapons, which caused the suspect to flee. And so there were even a couple of employees who were unsure what happened. They just saw the officers' reactions.
Possible the extended cartridge is one that was used to shoot the 2-year-old?
Yeah, we would just be guessing. That's certainly possible, though.
Did Powell get off any shots at any time, and how long was the quick chase before the shooting?
Powell was continuing to try to clear the weapon as the officers were chasing him. That comes from the officers' statements. Both of them said that independently. There were no shots fired in that incident other than the shots fired by the officers. He was fleeing, and they were chasing him on foot. It was probably about a block away before he was taken in custody. It was in the area of Sheridan and Magazine Streets, which is about a block, maybe a block and a half from the coffee shop. He was attempting to clear that weapon, presumably to use it as they were chasing him.
Was he confronted?
I'm sorry?
Was he confronted by the officers then during the shooting? Did he turn around? Did he talk to them?
We don't have any of that specific information. We probably wouldn't comment on those kinds of specifics at this
Was
time.
there a gun recovered in the scene?
There's no gun recovered in Suisun.
Amanda, can you give us a little idea of what was taking place in the house? Have you heard from the other people in the house? Was there an argument, a dispute? Was there a threat against the child of any type?
There's no indication that there was any argument occurring inside the residence. There's numerous people inside the residence, which are basically family members, when this shot rang out inside the house.
How did you determine it was accidental?
I'm sorry, what's that?
How did you determine the shot was accidental and self-inflicted?
So right now, the initial indication from talking with individuals at the scene is how we've come to that initial determination, but obviously we're following the evidence wherever that may lead. Obviously, what happened last night was a new development as we're looking into this, so we'll see where it goes.
Was the gun recovered there at that shooting, and what did you do with the?
There was no weapon recovered in Suisun City.
Is there anything about what Powell told the officers or anything you've seen on social media or anything from the family that suggests he's had any kind of motive against police officers? Did you say anything about his motive? Anything that would indicate that?
I'm sure our investigators will look at that. I don't know what kind of preliminary information they have, but they have not shared that. As I said, they were here very late and into the early morning hours, so we don't have that as of now.
So Lieutenant, can you,
We don't have that information, but we don't have any indications of that right now.
so Lieutenant, when Powell walked into Starbucks, he saw the two officers, pointed, leveled his gun at them. Did he say anything to them? Was it just a silent, I'm gonna shoot you now because you're two officers, or what?
He was outside the restaurant, like most Starbucks, it's all glass up front. One of the officers, was facing him, and so there was no conversation between the suspect and the officers. They just recognized his actions, obviously for what they were, and then drew their weapons to protect themselves, and when they did that, he fled and they pursued.
In the video from the gas station across the street, it looks like he's walking first and then starts running. How do you explain that?
Well, he walked up, that's our information as well, he walks up to, maybe classified as coolly and calmly, up to the front of the restaurant to do whatever he was planning to do, and then when he was engaged by the officers who drew their weapons, he took off running.
So did they shoot at him to prevent him from fleeing?
Well, I don't think it's prevented, he was obviously a danger to the public, a man with an assault weapon with a collapsible stock and a high-capacity magazine who had been probably involved in some way with some type of shooting in Suisun earlier in the day is definitely a danger to the public. So, and as he was running, he's also clearing his weapon, which is a clear indication that he intends to use it, not to surrender. And so the officers were protecting themselves, and they were protecting the public. It would just take a matter of seconds for someone, we don't know the specifics about, where was he facing and all that. That will come later with ballistics and all of that.
How old is Adam Powell? And what was found on him? In fact, you mentioned that it could hold 70 rounds. Did he have 70 rounds?
Did you ask how old he was?
Yeah.
He's 41 years old.
Can you spell his name?
It's,
Can you finish my question?
yeah, I don't have the information about how, I know that the magazine was loaded. I don't know if it was fully loaded. It had numerous rounds in the drum magazine. It was capable of holding 70 rounds. I don't have the information if it was fully loaded at this time. He also had a handgun that was loaded that was on him as well, and then, of course, what I mentioned earlier about the soft body armor.
Is the magazine, is that legal, the 70 rounds?
I don't believe so. That's a high-capacity magazine. I think in California, anything over 10 rounds is illegal. That's correct. He's also convicted parolee, so he cannot be in possession of a firearm.
So Lieutenant, how common or uncommon is it to encounter a suspect with a collapsible stock of this type of weapon? I mean, do you see it a lot, or do you not see it at all?
You can buy the weapon, and then the stock you could probably, get very easily and attach it to the weapon, so it's fairly common to see these kinds of weapons with collapsible stocks.
But in terms of an encounter between police and the suspect, you see it a lot?
It's not unusual.
Was his residence in Tucson City, your house, when the shooting happened?
So he's believed to have stayed there on a regular basis amongst another location, which is unknown at this time.
And Commander, can we get a clarification? Do we believe that it was the gun that was involved in the Officer Bell shooting, that was the one that was in connection with the 2-year-old, or is there another gun, the handgun?
We don't know at this point. As I mentioned before, Adam Powell is believed to be present at the residence when the shooting occurs, but when the officers arrived there on scene, Adam Powell had left the scene, and they did not locate a firearm at that time. They also conducted a follow-up search warrant at the residence and did not locate a firearm. However, they did locate ammunition inside the house.
Are any people at the house culpable?
Sorry, what's that?
Are any people at the house who were at the house culpable?
So one of the things that we're investigating as part of the criminal investigation is the storage of a firearm. Obviously, if you have a young child, if they did get access to it or whatnot, is to determine how did that happen.
Is there any indication of how long this was?
I couldn't hear the question.
Is there any indication of how ever lived in the
Yes, he's had residences in town as well. We're aware of some of those. It appears that he is primarily residing in Sassoon, but also floating in between Vallejo and Sassoon.
Commander, what did the family say of this 2-year-old? Do they believe the gun would belong to Powell, or clearly there was no gun there, and what did the family tell you?
Sure. So without going into individual statement or details, overall, the family members indicated they're unaware that there was a firearm inside the house at the time that this situation occurred.
And they didn't know what firearm was used?
Correct.
So the press release says the child was shot at 3 a.m., I think. Is it 3 p.m. or 3 a.m.?
It should be 3:28 p.m. I think is when we received the first call.
Any idea what happened between 3:28 and when the shooting at Starbucks?
So we don't know. As I mentioned before, we were attempting to locate where Powell was because he was a person of interest. He was at the house, we believe, when the shooting occurred, and then all of a sudden he was gone. So we attempted to try to locate him. Those efforts were unsuccessful, so we don't know exactly where he was at between that time and when the confrontation happened in Vallejo.
Can you tell me a little bit more about his condition? I mean, where was he shot and what condition?
The suspect was struck 3 times. He's in critical but stable condition, is my understanding. That was from early this morning. We're going to take a couple more questions, and then we're going to have to be on our way here.
Can you talk a little bit about the boy, first of all, and where was he hit?
So it's a boy, a 2-year-old boy, and he was hit in the upper portion of his body.
And you believe it was accidental, or you had it from that day?
So the initial indications from witnesses would be consistent with that, but we haven't come to a final conclusion. We're still following up on these.
Did the Vallejo PD recognize the suspect because he was a person of interest in Sassoon's case, or did they just see the gun and immediately react?
They were aware, because of the Sassoon putting out a Be on the Lookout, the officers were aware that this person was wanted in connection with that as a person of interest, has been said. They did not immediately recognize that this was the fellow. When he was transported in the ambulance, they put it together.
Do you have a picture you could release? The effect on the Vallejo Police Department of this shooting on this kind of
Well, as the chief said, go ahead.
I'm sorry, and so we're going to finish up here, and I'll answer your question before I'm done, and I also want to hit on the question that you said previously. And so and before I do that, I want to just let you know, as we get more information, we will release this. Keep in mind, you know, what Lieutenant Bassett said, our investigators were here through the night. They are taking a break now to get some sleep, and then they will be back on this. So this investigation will be continuing. In terms of how the police department is handling it, you know, quite frankly, we're relieved that this wasn't a tragedy, that our officers weren't assassinated. But officers in general, I think, around the country are in a heightened sense of alert now. I mean, these were two officers. It wasn't sort of normal during their normal course of their duties of taking action. They were sitting in a coffee shop, you know, taking a small, well-deserved break, and they were basically surprised by this gunman. You asked, sir, earlier about, is this a common occurrence? And I would say, no, it's not. And so what I would ask you to keep in mind is, here are two officers that are on a break, ambushed by somebody with superior firepower. Our officers in the field are, as you know, equipped with, you know, small handguns. And the assault weapon with a high-capacity magazine, somebody wearing body armor and also carrying a second weapon, has an extreme advantage over officers, especially taken by surprise. And again, you know, I want to underscore the bravery of our officers that took pursuit of this person. I mean, we'll never know what could have happened, but I think that we would all agree somebody going into our community equipped with an assault weapon, a secondary weapon, and wearing body armor is an extreme danger to everybody. And so I'm so very grateful that our officers took the action that they did, put themselves in harm's way on behalf of our community. And so with that, we're going to end this for now. As we get more information, we will get back to you, and thank you for being here today.
Could you give his full name, please, his initials, Adam Powell?
That's all we have.
An additional press release will be released when we have more information.
Do you know the spelling of his name?
It should be in the press release.
Is that the only picture of the gun?
When we release another press release, we will include photos. I can't release any of that information. It's the primary investigation of the police department and the district attorney's office.
I'm just gonna get a picture, but yeah, they can, I don't care, put it up to here and,
No, just make sure you get him. Don't need that kind of trouble.
We don't need that kind